Hi, everybody. My name is Julia Kupferman. I use she, her pronouns. I am the RAC Massachusetts organizer, which is the state project of the Religious Action Center. We focus on Massachusetts justice work, and I'm really excited to bring to you tonight a storytelling for action session. Tonight, we are going to be diving into our own experiences and practicing a lot of vulnerability with each other. And so I see a lot of folks with their cameras off tonight. If you are able to keep your camera on so we can be present with each other and feel safe sharing our own personal experiences to another person rather than to a black screen, that would always be appreciated as part of our Hineni value of showing up and being present tonight. I'm really glad to focus, really hone in. Oh, video is disabled by host. Can we? Okay, Lily's on it. Thanks for letting us know.
It's
Okay.
all set now, so sorry.
Okay, awesome. That's great. Look at us communicating using our tools. That's awesome. All right. So in the next 50 minutes, 49 minutes, we're going to be focusing on the skill of telling our own personal stories and learning to express why we care about the things that we care about. Stories are a really important tool, especially in justice and advocacy work. So I hope we all leave here today with one more tool in our toolbox. So at the end of our program today, I'm going to put up our slides here so we can all have some shared road mapping for what's going to go on. So our goals at the end of this session, first, to have a deeper understanding of our own stories and our own motivations, and then be able to tell those stories to the folks in this room. And finally, we really want to hear stories of other people in this room tonight. And how we're going to accomplish that is through this 4-part system. First, we're going to go over why do we tell stories. Then we'll do the how to make a story effective. Finally, we'll spend some time brainstorming some moments in our life that we want to tell as a story, and then we're going to practice. So I'm just going to stop share for a second to make sure that we are able to turn on our cameras. Are folks able to do that? Yes, it looks like we are. Awesome. Thank you so much for showing our faces. Oh, this is beautiful. We love when the tech works with us. Awesome. So, I'm going to address kind of the elephant in the room, right? Shavuot is a time when we're doing some Torah studies. So why did I choose to focus on storytelling tonight? I mean, stories are really all over the place. They're in books and movies and podcasts and advertisements. So before we jump into learning about stories, can we brainstorm together? I'd love to hear a couple of answers. Think of a time when you heard a really good story. What made that story so good? Let's get 1 or 2 answers. Some good stories. Yeah, Finn?
It stuck with you after you finished it.
Yeah, that's staying power. Heather says drama. Yeah, you're rolling with those emotional roller coasters. I love that. Storytelling is a really important skill in the justice work that I like to do, but it's also a very Jewish practice. Basically, every holiday we have, every Torah portion that we read every week, those are all stories of our people. We pass down our tradition through story because it helps us to more deeply understand lessons and like see ourselves in that narrative. It's a really important part of how we communicate. And today on Shavuot, I'm thinking a lot about the story of the golden calf, right? It could be very easy, and it was very easy for God to say, I'm the Lord your God. You shall not worship any gods besides me, right? God told us not to worship idols, but the way that we are able to retain and really internalize that lesson is through the story. We have those roller coaster points of drama, and that's what gives it that staying power that's able to last us these almost 6,000 years. And so we don't all need to be telling stories that are as dramatic and important as the golden calf. But we all have a story inside ourselves that can demonstrate our values, right? Our values might not be like, don't worship idols. That might not be a personal thing that we've experienced. But it's a way for us to show people what we care about, and help them take action on it. People are much more likely to do the thing we want them to do when they understand a little bit about us and why we care so much. So I will demonstrate some vulnerability by sharing a story of my own right now. Um, my story starts when I was a senior in high school and I was taking English literature. It was my favorite class. Um, I really loved the getting to dig deep into texts and complicated books. But really what I loved was my English teacher, Mrs. Moore. Um, One day we walked into class and she had tears in her eyes. She told us that the school board decided to get rid of art history as a course. At my school, there was a connected curriculum between English literature, art history, and world history, so we could get a deeper understanding of all three of those subjects by learning about all of them at the same time. A lot of my friends were in all three classes, but I personally wasn't in art history, not because I didn't care about it, but because my science class was at the same time, and I needed a science class for my college applications. Still, when I heard the news about the class being cut, I was really upset and angry. The school board apparently cited low numbers of student enrollment for the reason of getting rid of the class. But I knew that part of the reason, at least for the low numbers, was that other students also had to choose between science and art, college admissions, and their passion with learning. So together with the students and teachers in all three of those classes, we decided to email the superintendent and ask for art history to be reinstated. And you may be able to guess what the superintendent said back to us. He basically said it wasn't his problem and blew us off. He said, go to the school board, don't talk to me. And Mrs. Moore seemed like she was ready to give up and just go back to school the next day, but I really wasn't ready to let go. So I found the date for the next school board meeting and invited all of the students to go and testify about this issue. In the end, 5 of us showed up, probably the youngest people in the room by a good 40 years. And we sat in a row with my classmates. My knee was bouncing and my hands were shaking. And each of my classmates got up one by one to speak. And I realized I didn't prepare anything to say. So I was shakily typing notes in my phone, trying to add in anything I hadn't heard the other students say yet. Um, and then all of a sudden, in the blink of an eye, it was my turn to go up and stand at the podium and speak in front of the whole room and these really important people. And even though I was terrified and unprepared, somehow I was able to get my point across. And I saw the school board nodding along as I spoke. And I came back to my seat feeling like really high on adrenaline. The school board didn't make a decision during that meeting. A month later, they emailed our teachers and they told us that art history was still canceled for the next school year, but they decided to reinstate classes for the following year. Even though I was disappointed we couldn't win immediately, I was really proud that mobilizing even 5 students was enough to make a change. That lesson has inspired me to keep pushing for change, and it's why I'm now working on justice issues and why I'm here telling this story with you all tonight. So, thank you for listening to my story. I want to hear some reflections from my story. Can I hear 1 or 2 people tell me, what did you learn about me from this story?
I learned that you had a passion for diving deeper into different topics as opposed to staying on the surface.
Yeah, I like to go 1 level down, totally. Did any,
Bob,
yeah,
you're muted.
Bob, were you trying to speak? Let me see if I can ask you to unmute.
Hello?
Yep, there you
Yeah,
are.
great. I think that obviously there's a lot of relevance to what's going on right now in
Mhm.
terms of advocacy for certain forms of intellectual stimulation. And it also strikes me, was it your teacher that you talked to at first who said, I don't want to hear about it, go to the school board?
That was the superintendent. Yep.
You'd think that the superintendent would not want to have students running off complaining about him.
Yeah. You would also maybe that superintendent thought like, oh, there's no way they're gonna actually go through with this. If I blow them off now, this is not gonna be an issue. And he was wrong. Yeah. Can somebody share one value you think I have based off of this story?
Courage.
Courage. Yeah, I love that. Yeah, so just from this like, I don't know, 4-minute story, you've kind of learned a lot about me, and we've only been in this room together for 11 minutes. So, this brings us to why do we tell stories? Let's break this down a little bit and consider what makes storytelling such a powerful way to demonstrate our motivation and compel others to demonstrate theirs. So, you may just have seen a sneak peek, but let's get some answers thrown out there. Why do we tell stories? Put it in the chat, raise your hand, shout it out. Why do we tell stories? To connect to each other. Yeah. To inspire, make sense of the world. Yes, I love these. Totally. One that we've already talked about is demonstrating our values. You're able to kind of, instead of we're show not telling. Yeah, motivating, totally. You could have learned that I value courage by me saying, I value courage, but that doesn't really leave that lesson with you. Yeah, we're persuading, we're connecting with others. And one of the ways that we connect with others is by disrupting stereotypes. You may have walked into this meeting with some preconceived assumptions about me, the things I've experienced in the past. But when we learn about where somebody is coming from, we can really discard those stereotypes and get to connect with each other on a much deeper level. Yeah, we're teaching, we're learning, maybe we're amusing each other. Another thing that's really important about stories is that you can't tell me that didn't happen, right? You could say, I could say art history is really important for high school students, and you could say, no, it's really not. They need to be learning science. But you can't tell me that my experience from that story was not real and was not valid. So this is a way to kind of cut through the like facts and figures and get to the human connection and experience. Yeah, it resonates because it's firsthand. And another part of connecting with others is equalizing us, humanizing us. And we can really start building working relationships by bringing people into our moments of vulnerability. And that's how we build trust and build community and start that work towards justice. And finally, something that I love about sharing stories is that then I get to hear stories from other people. When I said that, maybe you thought, oh yeah, I had this experience in my high school that was similar, or this happened in my workplace. They were trying to cut a program. This really inspires people to think about their own experiences and connect those dots together. So we tell stories all the time. But today we're going to talk about a particular type of story called a public narrative. This is the type of story that we tell about things that we care about and to inspire them to join us in something, usually in my case, a justice issue. And this is a structure that we use to help guide our narrative and pace our structure. So it's called the challenge choice outcome model. Um, and it's not the only way to tell a story. There are certainly other ways, but I think it is a really effective place to start. So, challenge, the lightning bolt from the sky. The challenge is a moment when you were confronted by something. Maybe it's something that happened to you, you didn't know what to do about it, there was something you wanted to change. This is the moment that came to us. In the choice part, we say, what can we do about this? This is really the most interesting and juicy part of the story. The choices we make are actually the things that demonstrate our values and compel other people to see those values as important. A great example that I've heard from my colleagues is Spider-Man. When Spider-Man got his powers, he had a choice to make. Choice one, I got these powers, it happened to me, I guess I have them. Choice two, this really crazy thing happened to me. I was taught that with great power comes great responsibility, and I'm going to do something amazing to help people with my power. Obviously, the second version of this is the most powerful, because the way you choose to tell your story helps convey the importance of why this moment means so much to you and how it compelled you to action. And finally, outcome. What happened? All of this is the plot of the story. These are the beats, kind of the beginning, middle, and end that help us move our story along. And something else that helps ground us in these stories are like really vivid details, right? In my story, I was talking about my knees shaking and my teacher with tears in her eyes. These are the small details that really bring us in and make us feel like we're there in the story with you. So, does anybody have any questions about the challenge choice outcome model so far? Okay.
Is this very commonly used?
Yes and no. I'm sure that lots of people have different frameworks for them, but this I was taught this by Marshall Gans, who runs many storytelling trainings, and that is the one that we use at the RAC as kind of our standard model.
Yeah.
Okay, so the bulk of the next 30 minutes is gonna be working on our own stories. Keep in mind that these stories should be personal, but not private. You should be okay with your rabbi, your fellow congregants hearing the story. Maybe if this is about something really difficult in your life, you should have some distance, be healed from it a bit. We're talking from scars, not wounds. So, in a moment, I'm going to ask you to think back to a time or a couple of important times that impacted you, and ultimately led you to care enough about that issue to think about it today. It doesn't need to be too graphic or personal. It just needs to be important to you. You feel free to, grab a notepad next to you, maybe write some notes in your phone. Use any tool at your disposal that you'd like for this brainstorming session. I also want to emphasize it's okay if it's not immediately obvious what story you want to be telling today. The purpose of this exercise is to think back and try to draw out some moments that were significant, even if you didn't realize it at the time, and even if they were years apart. What made those moments significant is that ultimately they moved you to action, and brought you here today. So, here are some questions that we're going to be using to identify our story. We're going to spend some time brainstorming on our own. We're going to spend 5 minutes brainstorming on our own, and then we're going to go into breakout rooms with a partner to share these stories. Again, they will not be perfect, but this is a chance to workshop on our with one person, so it's not as daunting as talking to the 21 people in this room. So, here are some questions to be thinking about in identifying your moment. the challenge. What was a time when you didn't know what to do? What was a time when you realized you care about an issue? What was a time that you took action? Choice. What was the choice in front of you, and which one did you make? Outcome. What happened because of that choice? So I'm going to leave these questions up on the screen. Feel free to text to private message me if you have a private question, or put any questions in the main chat. I'm going to set 5 minutes on a timer so we can all brainstorm a little bit and then come back to the big group. Yep. So the main question here is identifying a story that is important to you, it demonstrates your values, and it moved you to action. Yeah, it's totally all right if you don't have a story for this really important moment in your life right now. There may be a time in the past that feels a little bit easier to talk about, but some lower stakes that you don't need to, be crying on the Zoom Tikkun tonight. We have about 2 minutes left on thinking about some important moments in our life that really demonstrate our values and showed us who we are and are ways that we can show others who we are. One more minute. Take all the time you need. All right. So that is our time. It's okay if you don't have a perfectly polished story quite yet. That is what these breakout rooms are for. So we're going to be going into breakout rooms with 1 or 2 other people in your room. Take turns sharing your story. We'll be in breakouts for 12 minutes. And once you share your story, give your partner a chance to give you some feedback. Some questions we're looking for are what did you learn from that person about their story? What are some values they hold? And what were some like really salient details that made that story good? You could also offer some constructive feedback on how they can improve that story to make it sharper, if you had any questions that you felt like were left unanswered. And then we're going to switch. So the other partner will have a chance to tell their story and receive feedback as well. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I promise this is not going to be as scary as it sounds. You are only going to be with 1 or 2 other people, so it is really not too scary. So I am just going to make these breakout rooms really quick. Okay. Alrighty. So I'm going to open rooms. They will be open for 12 minutes. And then we will come back and hear how they went. And I'll be popping into rooms throughout to hopefully hear some of your stories. All right. Breakout rooms are open, and let me know if you have any questions. Okay. I'm gonna go jump into some of those breakouts to hear how things are going. Hey, Patrice, do you need to be put into a breakout room?
Uh,
You probably have your, oh, okay, just one. Patrice, if you're trying to talk, you're muted.
no, I was in here twice. I'm sorry. I had to kind of work that out. I guess sure, but I just joined, so I'm not sure
Oh,
like
okay.
where you're picking up. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's
Totally.
fine.
So we are in breakout rooms sharing some personal public narratives of moments that were really important to us, shaped us, and can demonstrate our values. And so I can put you into a room with two other people so you can kind of listen and hear their own stories. And you don't feel free to share if you would like, but don't feel pressured since you're just joining.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. All right. Okay. I think the rooms will close in 2 minutes. Hey, Barbara, welcome. Folks are just in a breakout room right now, and they will be coming back in exactly 1 minute.
Thank you very much, RAC-MA.
Hag Sameach. Hi, Lisa, welcome.
I'll be
Folks,
back then. I'll be
awesome. Folks are in breakout rooms, so they're coming back in about 45 seconds. So just hang tight for a few seconds, and we will all be back together. Okay, you just got the 1 minute warning. I see. All right, so now we have another minute until folks come back. Never quite sure how Zoom works with that. Hi, folks, welcome back. Everyone else will be here in just a few seconds. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Sorry if we cut you off in the middle of your conversations. I always feel bad, but thank you so much for sharing your stories. I was able to join a couple of rooms and just really hear these powerful, vulnerable stories. And I hope you were able to connect with each other and learn more about your fellow TI family. So I want to hear a couple of report backs of your experience being in those rooms and listening to other people's stories. Can we get a couple of people sharing something that you learned about the values of the other people or person in your breakout room? What's a value you learned about them? Yeah,
I think
Miriam?
for me, one of the values that I heard for the brief time that I was in the breakout room was just being Jewish. And uh and how the importance of relating to the Jewish community and finding a way to be a part of the Jewish community.
Yeah, I love that, valuing Judaism and as a shared value. That's probably something that resonates with a lot of people here. Yeah. Yeah, Miriam, were you going to share as well?
Yeah. Sorry if I'm looking this way. My computer is here, but you're all on my TV. I was with Elaine, who shared a really beautiful story. And the values that came up that really resonate with me are values of adventure and resilience, and how we can maintain senses of self and identity after, hardship happens. So I'm really appreciative of that.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I'm curious, one or two people to share what made a story particularly effective. What were some things that the people in your breakout rooms did that like got you hooked, like made that stick with you in your brain? Elaine? Yeah. Elaine, you're muted if you want to talk.
Something just this moment occurred to me. That in Miriam's story, to me, a sense of, I had the impression that a sense of isolation led her on her path of even deeper Judaism and a decision to be a rabbi. And she had living in Japan, and it just occurred to me that I also, in a moment of extreme loneliness, thought, I have to find something Jewish. And it just occurred to me that we both had a living abroad Jewish path moment.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, so you were both able to really clearly see how her challenge led to that choice and led to the outcome of who she is and what she does today. And for you to relate to that, that's a really powerful part of a story, is knowing your audience and knowing what types of stories will resonate with them and bring them closer in relationship and closer to action.
If I could just share something, I think what's really interesting is that it's clear that Elaine and I obviously chose our stories before we shared them. Like we were given those few minutes beforehand. And not just, Julia, like you were saying, that to know your audience and know what might resonate. We've never met before. I don't know my audience. This was an exercise of trust and vulnerability. And I think part of the power of sharing stories is sort of taking a leap of faith that you don't necessarily know what will resonate. And Elaine and I didn't actually talk about Elaine didn't actually talk about Judaism at all in Japan. But now if we were in conversation, actually, we might have really realized that we had this similar experience, even though we came from two very different perspectives on these stories. Mine was how I became a rabbi. Elaine's was not about specifically anything Jewish. And yet we both really had these unique abroad experiences. And I'm curious about that is, I think, special, and that doesn't always happen. And I'm curious about what happens if our abroad experiences were completely different. Like, how do you maintain the spark of relationship when this is not necessarily how the conversation might go?
Yeah, I love this conversation. So another framework to talk about stories is there's a story of self. That's about you. That's your own story. There's a story of us as a community. What are the things that we have in common? And I think that's what we're getting to here. What is that story of us and how do we identify it? I was in a class about storytelling with Marshall Gans as the professor. And we had this challenge of, we were in a room of about 200 complete strangers, people across the globe in completely different circumstances, ages, tax brackets, countries, completely different life circumstances. And so what was the thing that we were able to confidently say was the story of us? The only thing we had in common was that we chose to be in the class. And so we all had to craft a story of us based on just that one class. Here in this room, we know that we have a lot more things in common, right? We are all in a Jewish space. We all chose to show up for Shavuot. We all are connected to Temple Israel. And so these are things that we can build a story of us around. But we might not necessarily know what we're going to get to until we start sharing those stories, which then elicits other stories. So I think that's a beautiful example of sharing our own experiences, being vulnerable can lead to more generative conversations and trusting relationships. Thank you both so much for sharing and being vulnerable. Yeah, Elaine, and then I think I saw Jerry unmute, so I want to give you a chance to speak as well.
I just want to say it was because of Patrice mentioning how Judaism came up in her room that sparked this thought with me. So
it's all triangulated with each other. Yeah. Jerry, did I see you unmute as well?
Oh, I did. Thank you. Thank you again. I'm just, I just feel, I was divinely led to be here with you and to be here with everybody. And though I didn't share my stories, as I said, I'd be a good listener. And, I had two other wonderful people on, and the sharing of the one story, I don't want to single anybody out, was just done it was just done, how can I put it, so poignantly, so beautifully, so clearly, so real. Just the little bits of putting, the time where it took place and, sort of the who, what, where, when, why, how. But it was just done so as if, he had written this story over and over and shared it with so many people. It was so wonderful and simple and authentic. And it showed his conviction at a young college age, going into college and standing up for what he thinks, and thought was right. And having even the courage, to do that, coming from a family that might not have agreed with what he was doing, but then there was a reconciliation after, but he stayed with his convictions. But I loved the simplicity and the clarity and yet the humanity of it. It was very inspirational to me. And our other, participant just shared some things as well. And it just was so wonderful. And it was also just opening up, a window into her heart, right? And her soul and her thinking, right? And it was just so beautiful. And it inspired me to put pen to paper tomorrow and to finally begin and not keep judging myself. And just to do it, because of everything that you said, you really, really inspired me. And thank you. Thank you so much.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much, Jerry. And thank you, everybody, so much for being here, being vulnerable, showing up, and creating those connections. I wish I could hear all of your stories, and I would love to. I'm putting my email in the chat. Feel free to reach out. I would love to get to meet and know each other better. The RAC Massachusetts has a lot of really great work coming up. We're going to be focusing on immigration and gun violence prevention over the course of the next 2 years. And we really love to have you in this work with us and bringing these powerful experiences to bear. So thank you, everybody. Chag Sameach. I hope you enjoy the rest of this Zoom Shavuot and have some really wonderful sessions tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.